The Law of Success. Lesson 4. The Habit of Saving. Man is a combination of flesh, bone, blood, hair, and brain cells. These are the building materials out of which he shapes, through the law of habit, his own personality. To advise one to save money without describing how to save would be somewhat like drawing the picture of a horse and writing under it, "This is a horse." It is obvious to all that the saving of money is one of the essentials for success, but the big question uppermost in the minds of the majority of those who do not save is, how can I do it? The saving of money is solely a matter of habit. For this reason, this lesson begins with a brief analysis of the law of habit. It is literally true that man, through the law of habit, shapes his own personality. Through repetition, any act indulged in a few times becomes a habit, and the mind appears to be nothing more than a mass of motivating forces growing out of our daily habits. When once fixed in the mind, a habit voluntarily impels one to action. For example, follow a given route to your daily work or to some other place that you frequently visit, and very soon the habit has been formed and your mind will lead you over that route without thought on your part. Moreover, if you start out with the intention of traveling in another direction without keeping the thought of the change in routes constantly in mind, you will find yourself following the old route. Public speakers have found that the telling over and over again of a story, which may be based upon pure fiction, brings into play the law of habit, and very soon they forget whether the story is true or not. Walls of limitation built through habit. Millions of people go through life in poverty and want because they have made destructive use of the law of habit. Not understanding either the law of habit or the law of attraction through which like attracts like, those who remain in poverty seldom realize that they are where they are as the result of their own acts. Fix in your mind the thought that your ability is limited to a given earning capacity, and you will never earn more than that, because the law of habit will set up a definite limitation of the amount you can earn. Your subconscious mind will accept this limitation, and very soon you will feel yourself slipping until finally you will become so hedged in by fear of poverty, one of the 6 basic fears, that opportunity will no longer knock at your door. Your doom will be sealed, your fate fixed. Formation of the habit of saving does not mean that you shall limit your earning capacity. It means just the opposite, that you shall apply this law so that it not only conserves that which you earn in a systematic manner, but it also places you in the way of greater opportunity and gives you the vision, the self-confidence, the imagination, the enthusiasm, the initiative, and leadership actually to increase your earning capacity. Stating this great law in another way, when you thoroughly understand the law of habit, you may ensure yourself success in the great game of money-making by playing both ends of that game against the middle. You proceed in this manner. First, through the law of definite chief aim, you set up in your mind an accurate, definite description of that which you want, including the amount of money you intend to earn. Your subconscious mind takes over this picture which you have created and uses it as a blueprint, chart, or map by which to mold your thoughts and actions into practical plans for attaining the object of your chief aim or purpose. Through the law of habit, you keep the object of your definite chief aim fixed in your mind, in the manner described in Lesson 2, until it becomes firmly and permanently implanted there. This practice will destroy the poverty consciousness and set up in its place a prosperity consciousness. You will actually begin to demand prosperity. You will begin to expect it. You will begin to prepare yourself to receive it and to use it wisely, thus paving the way or setting the stage for the development of the habit of saving. Second, having in this manner increased your earning power, you will make further use of the law of habit by provision, in your written statement of your definite chief aim, for saving a definite proportion of all the money you earn. Therefore, as your earnings increase, your savings will, likewise, increase in proportion. By ever urging yourself on and demanding of yourself increased earning power on the one hand, and by systematically laying aside a definite amount of all your earnings on the other hand, you will soon reach the point at which you have removed all imaginary limitations from your own mind, and you will then be well started on the road toward financial independence. Nothing could be more practical or more easily accomplished than this. Reverse the operation of the law of habit by setting up in your mind the fear of poverty, and very soon this fear will reduce your earning capacity until you will be barely able to earn sufficient money to take care of your actual necessities. The publishers of newspapers could create a panic in a week's time by filling their columns with news items concerning the actual business failures of the country, despite the fact that but few businesses compared to the total number in existence actually fail. The so-called crime waves are very largely the products of sensational journalism. A single murder case, when exploited by the newspapers of the country through scare headlines, is sufficient to start a regular wave of similar crimes in various localities. Following the repetition of the daily papers of the Hickman Story murder, similar cases began to be reported from other parts of the country. We are the victims of our habits, no matter who we are or what may be our life calling. Any idea that is deliberately fixed in the mind, or any idea that is permitted to set itself up in the mind, as the result of suggestion, environment, the influence of associates, etc., is sure to cause us to indulge in acts which conform to the nature of the idea. Form the habit of thinking and talking of prosperity and abundance, and very soon material evidence of these will begin to manifest itself in the nature of wider opportunity and new and unexpected opportunity. Like attracts like. If you are in business and have formed the habit of talking and thinking about business being bad, business will be bad. One pessimist, providing he is permitted to continue his destructive influence long enough, can destroy the work of half a dozen competent men, and he will do it by setting adrift in the minds of his associates the thought of poverty and failure. Don't be this type of man or woman. One of the most successful bankers in the state of Illinois has this sign hanging in his private office. We talk and think only of abundance here. If you have a tale of woe, please keep it, as we do not want it. No business firm wants the services of a pessimist, and those who understand the law of attraction and the law of habit will no more tolerate the pessimist than they would permit a burglar to roam around their place of business, for the reason that one such person will destroy the usefulness of those around him. In tens of thousands of homes, the general topic of conversation is poverty and want, and that is just what they are getting. They think of poverty, they talk of poverty, they accept poverty as their lot in life. They reason that because their ancestors were poor before them, they also must remain poor. The poverty consciousness is formed as the result of the habit of thinking of and fearing poverty. Lo, the thing I had feared has come upon me. The slavery of debt. Debt is a merciless master, a fatal enemy of the savings habit. Poverty alone is sufficient to kill off ambition, destroy self-confidence, and destroy hope. But add to it the burden of debt, and all who are victims of these two cruel taskmasters are practically doomed to failure. No man can do his best work. No man can express himself in terms that command respect. No man can either create or carry out a definite purpose in life with heavy debt hanging over his head. The man who is bound in the slavery of debt is just as helpless as the slave who is bound by ignorance or by actual chains. The author has a very close friend whose income is $1,000 a month. His wife loves society and tries to make a $20,000 showing on a $12,000 income, with the result that this poor fellow is usually about $8,000 in debt. Every member of his family has the spending habit, having acquired this from the mother. The children, 2 girls and 1 boy, are now of the age when they are thinking of going to college, but this is impossible because of the father's debts. The result is dissension between the father and his children, which makes the entire family unhappy and miserable. It is a terrible thing even to think of going through life like a prisoner in chains, bound down and owned by somebody else on account of debts. The accumulation of debts is a habit. It starts in a small way and grows to enormous proportions, slowly, step by step, until finally it takes charge of one's very soul. Thousands of young men start their married lives with unnecessary debts hanging over their heads and never manage to get out from under the load. After the novelty of marriage begins to wear off, as it usually does, the married couple begin to feel the embarrassment of want, and this feeling grows until it leads oftentimes to open dissatisfaction with one another, and eventually to the divorce court. The man who is bound by the slavery of debt has no time or inclination to set up or work out ideals, with the result that he drifts downward with time until he eventually begins to set up limitations in his own mind, and by these he hedges himself behind prison walls of fear and doubt from which he never escapes. No sacrifice is too great to avoid the misery of debt. Think of what you owe yourself and those who are dependent upon you, and resolve to be no man's debtor, is the advice of one very successful man whose early chances were destroyed by debt. This man came to himself soon enough to throw off the habit of buying that which he did not need, and eventually worked his way out of slavery. Most men who develop the habit of debt will not be so fortunate as to come to their senses in time to save themselves, because debt is something like quicksand, in that it has a tendency to draw its victim deeper and deeper into the mire. The fear of poverty is one of the most destructive of the 6 basic fears described in Lesson 3. The man who becomes hopelessly in debt is seized with this poverty fear, his ambition and self-confidence become paralyzed, and he sinks gradually into oblivion. There are 2 classes of debts, and these are so different in nature that they deserve to be here described as follows. 1. There are debts incurred for luxuries which become a dead loss. 2. There are debts incurred in the course of professional or business trading, which represent service or merchandise that can be converted back into assets. The first class of debts is the one to be avoided. The second class may be indulged in, providing the one incurring the debts uses judgment and does not go beyond the bounds of reasonable limitation. The moment one buys beyond his limitations, he enters the realm of speculation, and speculation swallows more of its victims than it enriches. Practically all people who live beyond their means are tempted to speculate with the hope that they may recoup, at a single turn of the wheel of fortune, so to speak, their entire indebtedness. The wheel generally stops at the wrong place, and, far from finding themselves out of debt, such people as indulge in speculation are bound more closely as slaves of debt. The fear of poverty breaks down the willpower of its victims, and they then find themselves unable to restore their lost fortunes, and what is still more sad, they lose all ambition to extricate themselves from the slavery of debt. Hardly a day passes that one may not see an account in the newspapers of at least one suicide as the result of worry over debts. The slavery of debt causes more suicides every year than all other causes combined, which is a slight indication of the cruelty of the poverty fear. During the war, millions of men faced the front-line trenches without flinching, knowing that death might overtake them any moment. Those same men, when facing the fear of poverty, often cringe and out of sheer desperation, which paralyzes their reason, sometimes commit suicide. The person who is free from debt may whip poverty and achieve outstanding financial success. But if he is bound by debt, such achievement is but a remote possibility and never a probability. Fear of poverty is a negative, destructive state of mind. Moreover, one negative state of mind has a tendency to attract other similar states of mind. For example, the fear of poverty may attract the fear of ill health, and these two may attract the fear of old age, so that the victim finds himself poverty-stricken, in ill health and actually growing old long before the time when he should begin to show the signs of old age. Millions of untimely, nameless graves have been filled by this cruel state of mind known as the fear of poverty. Less than a dozen years ago, a young man held a responsible position with the City National Bank of New York City. Through living beyond his income, he contracted a large amount of debts which caused him to worry until this destructive habit began to show up in his work, and he was dismissed from the bank's service. He secured another position at less money, but his creditors embarrassed him so that he decided to resign and go away into another city, where he hoped to escape them until he had accumulated enough money to pay off his indebtedness. Creditors have a way of tracing debtors, so very soon they were close on the heels of this young man, whose employer found out about his indebtedness and dismissed him from his position. He then searched in vain for employment for 2 months. One cold night, he went to the top of one of the tall buildings on Broadway and jumped off. Debt had claimed another victim.